What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Titans Time Podcast, your Titans podcast presented by the Pigskin Podcast Network. I'm your host, Tyler Staggs. Normally, joining me, as always, will be my brother, Tanner Staggs. But Tanner's got a trip planned that he's having to pack for, had this planned for a while, so we're just going to lone wolf it again today, and man, do we have a lot to talk about. The Titans have finally made some cut downs to their initial 53-man roster. This is not including the players that they already have on the, we're just going to call it the sickness/reserve list right now. So those players don't count towards the 53. But we'll dive into that a little bit later. If you want to support the podcast, go check out our merch. It is, all you have to do is go to titans-time.myshopify. That's shopify.com/collections. If you're listening to the audio version of the podcast, whether it be on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or many others, make sure you follow us, subscribe to us, whichever one it is on those podcasting apps, and go down, leave us a 5-star rating, leave us some reviews. We love seeing the reviews and getting your feedback on everything. If you're watching the YouTube video, go down. If that subscribe button is red, click it, turn it gray, and turn on the post notifications. That way you never miss when we upload a new episode. And guys, also make sure to like the video, share the video, and go down and leave your comments, especially on this video. We want to know what you think about the roster moves that the Titans have made today. I'm recording this as of Tuesday, August 31st. So, you know, this is fresh. The Titans just made these cuts not long ago. So by the time you hear this podcast or see this video, there may be more roster moves that are done, but we want your feedback on it. Also, check out our social medias. You can find us on Twitter at Titans_time. Find us on Facebook, Titans Time, and our Instagram, Titans Time Podcast. So let's get into the show now, guys. I've kept you waiting long enough on this. So the players that the Titans waived today, you have offensive lineman Cole Bamwart. And guys, Tanner always jokes about this, but he's not wrong. I'm bad with some of these names, so if I butcher them, don't judge me too bad. I mean, come on, take it easy on me, guys. Then you also have defensive back Buddy Calhoun, wide receiver Fred Brown, safety Jamal Carter, fullback Torrey Carter, offensive lineman Christian DeLauro, wide receiver and 4th-round pick Dez Fitzpatrick. We'll get into that a little bit more later. Tight end Miller Forrestall, offensive lineman Derwin Gray, defensive lineman Woodrow Hamilton, running back Javian Hawkins, linebacker Jan Johnson, defensive lineman Naquan Jones, wide receiver Mason Kinsey, tight end Jared Pickney, outside linebacker White Ray, and offensive lineman Jordan Roos. And also the Titans already, before it even got to Monday or Tuesday, went ahead and released John Simon. And that's a guy who I had making this 53-man roster. So that's something to definitely, you know, that came as a shock to me. I know a lot of the Titans media people up in Nashville had Simon making this team because of the amount of reps that he was getting in preseason games, how he was doing in practice and training camp. But hey, the Titans have been full of surprises. Another surprise that the Titans had for us is instead of keeping 6 receivers, they actually ended up keeping 7 and really kind of 8 on the roster right now, because you have Racy McMath, who is still on the sickness/reserve list. But I expect that when he comes off of that list, he will be released and either go to the practice squad or something like that. Now, let's talk about Dez Fitzpatrick, because this is a 4th-round pick that the Titans traded picks to go up and get Dez. And now a lot of people have an opinion on this. Some people say that J-Rob wasted a pick or several picks since they had to trade, I think, 3 other picks to go up and get Dez. But he didn't show much he started out slow in training camp and preseason. Then he started to come on a little bit at the end, but there's been a lot of other players released around the league, and this could be the Titans thinking, okay, he will make it past this first round of waivers, and we can get him back and put him on our practice squad. Now, Mason Kinsey, he was a guy who, let's face it, some Titans fans, we really fell in love with Kinsey. We wanted him on this team, and I've said it many times, I believe that he's earned a spot on this team. It was just trying to find where he would fit in. And Tanner and I went back and forth on it, talking about how Chester Rogers had his spot secured because of the return game and how he's been playing in the slot. And I posed this question to Tanner of, what do the Titans do if Chester Rogers gets hurt? They have to have a guy that they can fill in at that position. You know, do you want to have to go find someone off of your practice squad? Because Mason Kinsey may very well get picked up by another team after the preseason that he had and all the work that he's put in. Or do you want to keep someone like Kinsey on your 53-man roster? That way he's there. If something happens to Chester Rogers, you have him right there. You can plug him in and he can take over, no problem. But again, we kind of seen that maybe this would happen, and he did get cut. Hopefully he will clear waivers and can get back on the Titans practice squad, and if anything happens, can maybe get bumped back up to that 53-man roster. But the place that the Titans surprised people is they did, in fact, keep 7 receivers and a smaller receiver in Cam Batson. This could partly be because maybe Cam Batson isn't eligible for their practice squad anymore. But, you know, they basically have a backup plan now for if Chester Rogers gets hurt. And Cam Batson made this decision tough on them because he went out and balled out in that last preseason game against the Bears. So, another thing, as I mentioned earlier, the players on this sickness/reserve list do not count towards the 53-man roster. So you have guys like Ryan Tannehill, Jeff Swain, Ben Jones, Nate Davis, and Harold Landry who aren't necessarily showing on this 53-man initial roster. So technically the Titans, if you break it down, have 62 players. But when these guys go to come off of that sickness list, the Titans are going to be having to let more people go. But where that has opened things up is you now have 2 quarterbacks still on the initial 53-man roster. You have Logan Woodside and Matt Barkley. I thought Barkley would already be gone. But nope, the Titans are keeping him around right now, probably waiting to see what happens with Ryan Tannehill and when he is able to return to the team. We know also some other big news today, not necessarily dealing with the Titans, but the Patriots released Cam Newton. And a lot of Titans fans it's kind of split down the middle. Some Titans fans are like, go get him. He would be a good veteran backup for Ryan Tannehill. We would trust him more than Logan Woodside and Matt Barkley. Then you have the other half that are like, no, we do not need Cam here. I'm kind of in the middle because, yes, Cam is a veteran quarterback in this league. He's a former MVP. But to me, do I think he would be a good fit for the Titans? No. Some people have said, oh, him and Derrick Henry in the backfield, they could run that option. We don't need that. We don't. We've seen that with him and Mariota. It did not work out. Don't go and do that experiment again. We don't need it. As of right now, and this is tough for me to say, but Woodside knows the system. He's more conservative and wants to be more efficient, whereas Cam he doesn't always make the best decisions. So I'm going to say Titans, stay away from Cam. That's my opinion. Tanner may have a different opinion on it whenever he gets back. You know, maybe we go back and forth on that. Now, another thing that the Titans have done by releasing this initial 53-man roster is it looks like they are setting it up to have 4 running backs on the team. And yes, one of those guys is Blasingame, who is our fullback, but he counts under the running backs. Then we also have Derrick Henry, Darrington Evans, and Mekhi Sargent. Can't forget about Jeremy McNichols on the sickness/reserve list, though. Now, some people have been tossing this back and forth. What happens when McNichols comes back from that list? It can be very tempting for the Titans after last year, the pass protection that McNichols was able to provide for them, to want to say, okay, we're going to end up keeping McNichols, and Sargent, sorry, but you're gone. That's not going to be the case in my opinion. My opinion, the Titans are going to keep Sargent, and kind of like with the Racey McMath situation for the wide receivers, how he's technically still on the team because of the sickness list, that's the only reason Jeremy McNichols is still here, in my opinion. After he comes back, I have a feeling he will be waived. He may pop back up on the Titans practice squad, but this third running back spot behind Henry and Evans belongs to Sargent. They need to keep him around. Receivers. I thought the Titans would only be keeping 6 receivers. They surprised everyone, and they have 7. Now, here's where I was wrong in my initial, when I predicted who I thought would make the initial 53-man roster. I had A.J. Brown, Julio Jones, Josh Reynolds, Chester Rogers, Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, and Dez Fitzpatrick. Well, as you can see, I was pretty close, but one of those guys is not there, and that's Dez Fitzpatrick. Already touched on that some, not going to beat a dead horse right here. But the Titans ended up surprising some people, and like I said, brought back Cam Batson. And just looking here at the depth chart, or not the depth chart, but the initial 53-man roster, you have Julio Jones, you have A.J. Brown, you have Cam Batson, you have Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, you have Josh Reynolds, and the last receiver that they kept, Chester Rogers, sorry, and they also did end up keeping Marcus Johnson. We kind of had a little bit of a discussion about that in our last episode. Johnson hasn't really been able to stay healthy. We also talked about how Reynolds was maybe one of those guys that could be a surprise and end up being cut because he's been injured, hasn't been out on the practice field. I know Reynolds was back at practice today. Not really sure about Marcus Johnson, but I mean, he got injured again in that last preseason game against the Bears. Maybe we end up seeing one of these guys go on IR. Maybe that's where Marcus Johnson ends up. That way, he's still there for the team if, like, say he were to get healthy, not on season-ending IR, but just the couple-week IR, and they can bring him back if they need to. Now, offensive line, I'm pretty sure that the Titans ended up keeping 9. We'll look through here right quick. You have Quessenberry, Radens, Saffold, Ty Sambralo, Kendall Lamb. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You have Aaron Brewer. Daniel Munyer is still showing on this initial 53-man roster. This is interesting because he went down hurt as well. This could be another guy, another situation where he's just on there until Ben Jones is able to come off of the sickness list. Once he comes back, probably going to see Daniel Munyer gone. Also, the Titans, as really a surprise, kept a lot of cornerbacks and safeties. So just grouping the defensive backs together, that really surprises some people, because for me, I had the Titans keeping 4 safeties and 6 cornerbacks. So I could be a little bit wrong on my breakdown here of how many they have. Caleb Farley was one of the cornerbacks that I said was going to be on this team. I think that's no surprise to anyone. Then you have Jackrabbit Jenkins, no surprise. Matthias Farley, still here. I had him predicted to be on there. Chris Jones, who is a guy that I did not have making it for the cornerbacks: Elijah Molden, Christian Fulton, Breon Borders, and I believe that is going to be it for the cornerbacks. Now, safeties, we have, as I mentioned, Matthias Farley. Sorry, I threw him in with cornerbacks there a minute ago. Bradley McDougald, Kevin Byard, Brady Breeze is still hanging around, Amani Hooker, and Dane Cruikshank, which, again, that's another interesting one because Dane Cruikshank is a guy who has been hurt. I mean, I've heard other people joke around about it. He spent more time in the training room than he has out on the practice field. So could this be another situation where the Titans are wanting to keep him around simply because of his special teams play? Maybe they think that he's getting close to being able to return to the team and be out there on the practice field, and maybe they put him on that short-term IR. That way he's not getting released, possibly doesn't make it back to their practice squad because another team decides, hey, we want to go grab him. So, I mean, a lot of interesting moves here. I guess the two biggest surprises to me is Brady Breeze and Dane Cruikshank still being there, because I thought these are guys that would be gone. Again, Cruikshank because of his injury right now, and I thought Brady Breeze would be gone just because he did get hurt in the first preseason game. He also had the factor of, before any preseason game started, he got ejected from practice when he had a high hit on Dez Fitzpatrick, hit him in the head. Vrabel threw him out of the practice. So, you know, that's a little bit interesting to see him still there. But again, the Titans have more playroom because of the players on the reserve list right now. Again, you have 9 players. Just to run through them here: Ryan Tannehill, Jeremy McNichols, Justin March-Lillard, Nick Dzubnar, Harold Landry, Ben Jones, Nate Davis, Racy McMath, and Jeff Swain. I said 5 of those guys that they're going to come back and they're going to have a spot on this team. In case you missed it earlier, that's Ryan Tannehill, that is Harold Landry, Ben Jones, Nate Davis, and Jeff Swain. A guy that's interesting, though, mainly because of his special teams play as well, is Nick Dzubnar. When he comes back, does he end up making this Titans team just simply because they need more depth for special teams and need another inside linebacker? Because as of right now, I believe the Titans only have 4 inside linebackers on the team. That's going to be Rashaan Evans, Jayon Brown, Monty Rice, and David Long Jr., which are all guys that I predicted to make the team. And looking at it here, that's actually all I had the Titans keeping. So I could be wrong and get a big surprise whenever Dzubnar comes off of the sickness/reserve list. Maybe the Titans add him back, and let's face it, guys, I'm no professional at this, but I felt pretty good about the 53-man roster that I had wrote down for the Titans. We still have Sam Kickin' Fickin' on the team. The guy has been doing a great job since getting here in Tennessee, especially in the preseason games. Hasn't missed yet. Early on in some of the practices, he missed when he joined the team, but since then he's been put together a couple of perfect days. And again, I think the big thing is the games that he's put together for perfect games of not missing a kick. Now, another position that we need to talk about is our outside linebackers, our pass rushers, our edge rush, because we really haven't had that much depth at that position over the past couple years, and it has come back to bite us in the ass, which is what we do not need this year. Going back to my initial 53-man roster prediction, I had the Titans keeping Bud Dupree, Harold Landry, Rashad Weaver, John Simon, Ola, and Roberson. I had them keeping 6. Well, I already know that's not going to be the case. As I mentioned earlier, Simon no longer with the team. You have Harold Landry, who's still on that sickness/reserve list. But the other guys that you have on the team are Bud Dupree, Derek Roberson, who the Titans have decided to keep around. I mean, a lot of people thought maybe he got the kiss of death for being on this roster when coaches have come out and said that he's had a really good training camp, been doing really good in practice, and looks better than he has in past years. They thought, okay, that's fixing to be the end for him. I hope it's not. I think he does a pretty good job when he's out there. That's just my opinion on this. And if his coaches are saying that he is continuing to improve, keep him around if you have room on the roster and let him keep trying, because you can never have really enough depth at this edge rush position. I mean, Harold Landry cannot play every snap. Bud Dupree cannot play every snap. Rashad Weaver cannot play every snap. We got to have guys that we can rotate in and out, keep them fresh, and get after the quarterback. Then you do have Rashad Weaver still on this roster. Hopefully all the outside stuff for football goes well and he is still able to be a part of this team. Then you also have Ola, not even going to attempt his last name because, guys, again, horrible with names. I do not need to butcher this guy's last name. So you have the Titans keeping 4 outside linebackers right now, and that's not including Harold Landry. So hopefully he'll come back good to go. And as I said, other than Simon, I was pretty close right there. Now just our defensive linemen. Going back to my prediction, I had Jeffrey Simmons, Danico Autry, Tierre Tart, Laurel Murchison, and Anthony Rush. Going through and looking at this Titans initial 53-man roster, we still have Jeffrey Simmons, of course, Danico Autry, no worry there, Tierre Tart. The guy, I think he's going to have a really good year this year. I'm not going to say he's going to be a breakout player, but he looks much improved from last year. Anthony Rush is still on this team, and Laurel Murchison is still on this team. So, hey, I feel like I've done a pretty good job there. Was able to hit on all of those guys, and you know, I do think that the main reason that they kept Anthony Rush is because the guy is a big body. He takes up the middle of the line when he's out there. He's 6'4", 361 pounds. That's a lot of man for an offensive lineman to try and move. So if he can be, and he's not going to be out there all the time. If we have to call his number to get out there right now, all we need him to do is go out there and take up that space. Don't let the middle of the line or the middle of the field open up there for running backs to have room or for a quarterback to take off. Just occupy that space the best you can, big man. Now, I talked about Jeff Swaim earlier, how he is on this sickness/reserve list. But I haven't mentioned the other tight ends that are still on the team and that have made this initial 53-man roster. Big surprise, I know, Anthony Firkser is still there. And, of course, I'm just joking around. That's not really a big surprise. We knew that Firkser would be on this team. But the Titans did also keep Tommy Hudson and Luke Stalker. So, when Jeff Swaim gets back from this sickness/reserve list, it looks like the Titans plan on keeping 4 tight ends. Now, again, all of this may change since there are 9 guys on this sickness/reserve list. And again, there's 4 other guys besides Jeff Swaim who have to come back, and they are going to have a roster spot. So the Titans, they have a little bit more time to decide who they are going to end up getting, who they are going to end up cutting. But they don't have to make that decision right this minute. Now, over the next couple days, we could see some guys come back from this, list, and the Titans' hands gets pushed a little bit to where they have to go ahead and make these cuts. Last thing I want to hit on is the injured reserve list that the Titans already have right now. You have players like Tucker McCann, Brian Hill, and Kyle Pico, and Trevon Conley. So you have 2 D tackles there. You have Brian Hill, a running back, and another kicker. Don't know exactly how long these guys are going to be on IR for. But you do have to wonder, since they are on injured reserve right now, when they come back, we could possibly see Tucker McCann end back up on the Titans practice squad. Brian Hill, he's a guy who some people thought maybe he competes for that 3rd running back spot before Sargent just took over the preseason and showed why he should be the number 3 running back on this roster. And now, as far as Kyle Pico and Trevon Conley, or Coley, sorry. Told you guys, bad with names. These are 2 people who we could see end up, if they come back from injured reserve, taking a spot from Anthony Rush. I mean, these are things that are still up in the air right now because, again, this 53-man roster that the Titans are down to today, this is not going to be the final 53-man roster. It's just not. The Titans are going to be making more moves. You're going to have players coming back. We're going to see more players released. Other teams around the league are releasing players that the Titans, maybe some of these draft picks from this previous year that the Titans weren't able to get, and maybe these guys were on their radar, they want to go and they decide to bring them in to see what they can do. See if they are a guy that, could end up being on this team later on. But we don't know that. That J-Rob is the one that knows that. Mike Vrabel, they're the ones that know this. We do know, by the way, speaking of Vrabel, that Vrabel will be back with the team tomorrow. He's ready to get back into the building. He's tired of doing all of his work from Zoom, Zoom meeting this, Zoom meeting that. He's ready to get back with this team. He's ready to be back in the facility, working with his guys, and probably get on their asses a little bit for, anything that they've done wrong or that he thinks that they could do better. But guys, this is all I have for this episode. This has been Titans Time, and as always, tighten up.